West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
This map captures it's like a checklist of non-compliance. There was never any intent in this building to comply with that court order. Never. Also, there was never any intent in this building to comply with the Voting Rights Act.
That was Alabama state lawmaker Chris England speaking on Friday. A Democrat lodging one final objection as Alabama Republicans defied an order from the United States Supreme Court to fix a very problematic congressional map. Last month, the Supreme Court found Alabama in violation of the Voting Rights Act. In Alabama, 1 in 4 voters is black, but Republicans in the legislature cleverly constructed the state's congressional districts, so only 1 of 7 congressional districts in the state is majority black. That was too racially discriminatory, even for this hard-right conservative United States Supreme Court. And so the court ordered Alabama to redraw the lines so black voters would make up the majority or something quite close to it in 2 congressional districts, not just 1. To that, Alabama Republicans just basically said, no, we won't do it. They did draw new lines for new districts, but the new lines don't include anything like a new majority black district. So what does this mean? I mean, the sort of best case terrible scenario here is that Alabama Republicans are trying to stretch this out as long as possible to try and give themselves another shot at holding another election with illegal, racially discriminatory maps that favor Republicans. That's the best case terrible scenario. The worst case terrible scenario is that Alabama Republicans are just deciding that they don't recognize the authority of the federal government and federal courts. And that, of course, brings back all sorts of bad memories about what Alabama is capable of. But when we're about to have a presidential election in which the central question is likely to be whether or not we as a country follow the law, whether the law applies to everyone, this is a particularly incendiary move by Alabama Republicans. One that Alabama Democrats, like State Rep Chris England, have been raising the alarm about.
One thing that I always say about Alabama, it continues to be the place where the dead bury the living. We're haunted by a ghost of the past. And every time we get to a critical juncture where better angels could lead us in a proper direction, we refuse and we say, we dare defend our rights.
Joining us now is Chris England. He is a Democratic member of the Alabama House of Representatives. Representative England, I really appreciate you making time to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to ask you about those 2 scenarios that I just mentioned there. Do you think that Alabama Republicans are just sort of playing for time and knowing they're going to lose this, but they're dragging it out as long as possible? Or do you think they really are making an attempt to resist or nullify this federal court order?
I think it's a host of different things. I think at the bare minimum, it's an attempt to protect status quo. But at the worst of it all, I think it's an attempt to also buy time to use this illegal map for 2 more years. But the other part of it is, I think it's an extension of the work that was done to eliminate Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in the Shelby County case to now maybe using this non-compliant, defiant map to go back to the Supreme Court and hopefully convince the justices that, we're all conservatives here, so throw us a bone and maybe finish off Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act as well.
So if the Supreme Court was already willing in the Shelby County case to gut the Voting Rights Act by getting rid of Section 5, but Section 2 still exists, you think they may be doing this basically to tee up a case that would throw out the rest of the Voting Rights Act, that would throw out Section 2 as well?
Oh, no, I don't doubt it. I think it's a long legal strategy that ultimately buys them either time or makes another argument to go after Section 2. But on the other hand, it also throws the entire map to 1 or 2 people. A special master will draw it, and we basically shirked our constitutional responsibilities to represent our constituents and use them essentially as collateral damage for a political cause. And it was actually driven by people who don't even live here. If you remember, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the Speaker of the House, McCarthy, called the Senate sponsor of the map and told him he's interested in keeping his majority. But I think Alabama citizens were probably more interested in the state keeping up to its obligations and following the law.
Kevin McCarthy encouraging defiance of the federal courts in order to eke out more illegally defined Republican-leaning districts obviously has disturbing national implications, but so does just saying that court orders don't matter, that if the federal courts are going to stand up and tell states what to do, states have an option to disobey those orders. I wonder, Representative England, what's been the reaction among Alabama voters, among your constituents, among black voters in Alabama in general, as this fight has played out the way it has?
Disappointment, disgust, but not surprised. There's interesting context here that many African Americans who occupy elected spaces in Alabama are representing districts that are majority minority and that were created by court orders from lawsuits that were filed years ago. The 7th Congressional District itself was a district created by a lawsuit and a court order. And interestingly enough, not only is the black voting age population in the newly created 2nd Congressional District 39%, but the 7th Congressional District, this was created by a court order for the specific purpose of electing an African American, saw its black voting age population in this new map go from 55% to 50%, which is just another, just an outright slap in the face if you're considering the fight and the history that Alabama shares with the rest of the country in terms of courts and the federal government having to force Alabama to do the right thing in situations like this. So it is not surprise, but still disappointment in the fact that Alabama once again gets to this crucial threshold and fails to do the right thing.
It is Tuesday, the 25th of July of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika has made all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. All right. sometimes when you originally start things up from way back and you make these little taglines, they might be a little wordy, but they get the point across. Hi, how are ya? Have more indictments been brought down? I had to put myself in that proverbial bubble again. So, though I will confess that there is a media device that's actually behind me at the moment. It's called cable television. A big old giant screen it's a giant screen that we would call giant screen back in the day. Now they have like drive-in size screens. You almost have to go across the street to, get the full effect. But no, I have a TV behind me, and it is on, and though I should say it's muted. So we are in a bubble of sorts, and I'm not turning around. I'm not. So if there have been more indictments brought down, unless they've actually handcuffed him and started parading him, or not, I'm just going to, just kind of not worry too much. Once they do put the cuffs on him, I think maybe all those people that have, I don't know, minimum of a $40,000 armory. Is it in their basement, or is it just what they carry around in their big monster trucks that they've turned into assault weapons? Yeah, run over a protester with this. We'll show them what liberty's about. Then I'll start worrying once they put the cuffs on them, because that's what, that might arouse their ire. Irk them. Yep. So we've got a few issues here to attend to not issues, but they're issues in the greater scheme of the news, and that's what we're talking about. Offerings here in the Bistro Cafe that we should attend to. Got a little behind here once again. These mornings have been so nice that I want my mom to get out in the sun, or when it's cool, and get her hypothalamus stimulated, which it does. And so, but you got to make sure she's set up, because she might need something, and I don't want her taking her hands off her walker to carry something. And I know that I could make a little basket. I did that before, but there's certain things that she can't even put into a basket. She needs assistance. Anyway, all that aside, it sounds like an excuse, and you know what? It is a pretty damn good one. Personal business. It did get me out of jury duty. I've been talking about, I can never get on a jury, because every time I mention that I have a grad degree, it seems like that's when I get kicked off. Why is that? Well, it happened a lot down in Alameda. That's where I was mostly called for jury duty. I think I was called for jury duty in Marin a few times too. But once again, once I said grad degree, they go, oh no, you can't have that. What is it in? I go, well, American literature. Oh no, not that. We can't have you on the jury. You might try to become jury foreman, and we don't want that. So now, though, I just can't, I could not wrangle it to get anyone to care for my mom while I would be on my window of jury duty. So I had to say that I'm the sole provider, which apparently now I guess I am. Wow. That's a lot of responsibility. So much that it gets me out of my civic duty. So some people might say that's an excuse, and I might say, well, it's a damn pretty good one. Jeez. Yeah. Now that I want to get on it, it looks like I was gonna. Maybe I might have been this time. Maybe my education or whatever it is. Because I don't think it's just my education. It's got to be something else. precludes me from being on a jury. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe they know there'd be a power struggle on who would be jury foreman. Yeah. What? What am I? Am I an alpha male? I don't know. I don't know. But sometimes you gotta, just put your foot forward and say, or don't say anything. Just put your foot forward and go from there. All right, enough of that. I don't know. We're not in therapy, though maybe we should be. But we do have a salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and some subjects where we like to kick around. I don't mean subjects as like, the royal subject. We don't kick those people around. And we don't even look at them as subjects, do we? No, we're talking about content here that we are going to mull over. And what might that be? Well, I'll tell you. Rachel at the top did break it down about Alabama Republicans may be plotting something bigger with their defiance of the Supreme Court. And it looks like they're going to go after the 14th Amendment. No slaves can vote. Eek. On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, a southern Oregon town is buying the forest around it to confront wildfires. Now they figured it out. Small-town GOP officials are torn over Biden's clean energy cash. Quite a conundrum, huh? And an Idaho jury hit right-wing anti-government militant Eamon Bundy with $26.5 million in compensatory damages and $26 million in punitive damages over a defamation lawsuit filed by a Boise hospital. Yeah, well, let's see if we can get him to pay up. I suggested that maybe they should send marshals in and confiscate his cattle. Maybe they can actually do it this time. After the break, we move to the chef's table where a week-old wildfire on the Greek resort island of Rhodes tore past fire line defenses, forcing more evacuations. And Argentina demanded that Bolivia explain its new defense agreement with Iran. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It really helps. It really does. So thank you to those of you who have. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, or is it X? It's always going to be called Twitter. I'm not even going to say I'm sorry. It's Twitter. Anyway, on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so by going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, and now Blue Sky. I got one of those codes. Somebody said, hey, I got my first invite code, and you're the first person they thought of, and so I did. Thank you. So anyway, we'll see how that works. I was a little concerned about Jack's involvement, but I'm assured he doesn't have much. We'll see. Anyway, you can find me on all those platforms at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where you can read the actual articles and see the actual clips. And to do that easily, you could just follow me on those social media platforms, and then you can get the links to the show notes and links. And then you'll be able to see the actual reportage, just as I said. All right. You can also follow the show on Twitter. It's just a placemat, I know. But we're going to up its involvement in the other platforms soon. But you can find the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found, but you'll never find them on Stitcher because apparently Stitcher is goodbye. Thank you, SiriusXM. Thank you very much. All right. Let us now, tisk. Let us now get into this first offering. And it is out of the Columbia Insight, which is a news site based in Hood River, Oregon, that gives insight on the Columbia River Gorge area. Yeah. But it's by Grant Stringer from Columbia Insight. With a population of just 400 people, Butte Falls is a speck in an ocean of remote timberland, much of it burned. The community is tucked into a vast forest of pine and fir about 35 miles from the California border. Outside town, snow-capped Mount McLaughlin towers above a vast burn scar, where blackened trees from the South Obenchain fire stood crookedly across miles of the Cascade Ranges foothills. In September 2020, logger Don Hammond watched with awe as that blaze cast embers over his head in the middle of the night. Age 70, Hammond ignored an evacuation notice to protect his property and that of his neighbors on a woody rise above Butte Falls. In the light of day, Hammond could see the smoke from a separate fire burning thousands of homes in nearby Ashland and Talent, and further to the north, yet another blaze leveled the mountain community of Blue River. The Obenchain would burn 33,000 acres and skirted Butte Falls by just a quarter of a mile. You can't stop it, Hammond recalled. It was amazing. Butte Falls residents disproportionately live with disabilities or in mobile homes, risk factors that make it difficult to prepare and evacuate from wildfires that have become increasingly destructive. The hamlet itself, once a logging powerhouse, is still struggling to provide residents with good-paying jobs more than 40 years after the local timber industry began its long decline. Almost 10% of Butte Falls residents left town between 2010 and 2021. Conventional wisdom in the region would have Butte Falls try to reclaim its former glory as a logging hub. But community leaders have hatched an ambitious plan to protect their future by looking to the forest itself as a source of protection as much as prosperity. The town government recently purchased a ring of privately owned timberland surrounding Butte Falls. Instead of harvesting the land, which could provide an immediate short-term boon to the town economy, locals want to grow an older and biodiverse forest that they say will better protect the town from wildfires while attracting outdoor tourism. Conservationists and the state's top politicos say the small project, playing out in a remote corner of the Pacific Northwest forest, can teach other communities how to adapt to climate disasters and hard times. Jeff Stein of the Washington Post brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Tony Zartman has listened to opponents of a proposed solar farm claim that runoff from the panels would contaminate their drinking water. He's heard that wind turbines make cell phone service impossible, and he's been told that solar farms would be overrun by rats that would torment neighbors. One recent Tuesday morning, Zartman stood a few feet away as the 3 Republican commissioners of Fairfield County weighed the fate of a proposal to build a solar farm on central Ohio farmland worth more than $250 million. A Republican, Zartman had approved a major renewable energy project while commissioner of Paulding County, and for the past year, he has crisscrossed the state, urging others to do the same. The Fairfield commissioners should put politics aside, Zartman urged, and approve the proposed site. Jobs would come. The money the company was providing for the project was real. Tax revenue would jump. We have new parks, the school systems are flourishing with all the additional revenue. The roads are in the best condition they've been in, said Zartman, 55, who has traveled to more than 40 counties across the state spreading the message. I tell them, I am a diehard conservative, but I support renewables because they've just been amazing for us financially. Just like we told them. For all of Zartman's evangelism, his arguments do not always carry the day in the red heart of Ohio. Like similar fights throughout conservative parts of the U.S., the debate in the Fairfield County reflects one of the central ironies of President Biden's signature legislation, last year's Inflation Reduction Act. Although it was drafted and passed exclusively by Democrats in Washington, the fate of the law will hinge in large part on the decisions of state and local Republican officials. The idea behind the law and its hundreds of billions of dollars in expanded clean energy tax credits was to change both the economics and the politics that have held green industry back. Rather than pursue a carbon tax administered by the federal government or other policies some on the left have pushed, the Biden administration is seeding the money for a new renewable energy sector that would make cleaner options a better bet financially than burning fossil fuels, regardless of one's position on climate change. The hope was that government subsidies would unleash a tidal wave of investment to shatter local opposition and break the nation's dependence on fossil fuel energy, particularly as the cost of renewable energy plummets. But it won't succeed without cooperation from some of Biden's political adversaries. Huge swaths of this new green energy production are being proposed for rural states, where land is cheaper than on the urbanized coasts. Ohio and Texas for expansive new solar arrays, massive wind installations in the open plains of Oklahoma and Nebraska, a new hub for producing batteries for electric vehicles in the Southeast, centered in Georgia and South Carolina. The law includes incentives to make it particularly attractive for clean energy firms to invest in former fossil fuel producing communities, and clean energy firms often look for workforces that are not unionized. These factors also push investment to GOP-held states. Ludwig of the Idaho Statesman brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 14 months after St. Luke's filed a defamation lawsuit against Eamon Bundy and another far-right activist, neither of whom ever came to court, the case has reached a conclusion. The 12 jurors deciding damages in the civil action filed back into the courtroom early yesterday evening, Monday, to announce what Bundy, close associate Diego Rodriguez, and their various entities would be ordered to pay the health system and other plaintiffs. The verdict? A total of $26.5 million in compensatory damages and another $26 million in punitive. The $500,000 extra in the compensatory category came as a result of the jury's finding that violations of the Idaho Charitable Solicitation Act by Rodriguez and his Freedom Man press business had harmed the plaintiffs. Compensatory damages are intended to repay plaintiffs for losses experienced because of defendants' actions, and punitive damages are meant to punish defendants for their actions. All right, now go collect. That brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
For Science Quickly, I'm Gary Sticks. Dreams may say something about the psyche, but they also say something about disease states. Dreams may even be something we can take some control over. To find out about all this, Scientific American got in touch with sleep expert Isabelle Arnulf, who is head of the Sleep Disorders Clinic at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris. During her career, Arnulf, who is also a professor of neurology at Sorbonne University in France, has researched a broad range of sleep conditions: sleepwalking, rapid eye movement, sleep behavior disorder, lucid dreaming, sleep in Parkinson's disease, and hypersomnia being excessive daytime sleepiness. Professor Arnulf is with us now to talk about sleep and dreams. Hello, Professor Arnulf. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you.
So REM sleep behavior disorder has been a real focus of your research. Can you tell us what that is and how you found that it interacts with dreams, and also how it might help us to better understand dreams?
So REM sleep behavior disorders correspond to people having some violent behaviors during sleep, including boxing, kicking, shouting. This is the most common kind of dream behavior we see. And this is a disorder that should be treated because people are injuring themselves or their loved one. Most of them are older than 50 years old, and they can go up to 80. So it's not young people. And it has been discovered in the last 15 years that these behaviors, when they occurred in elderly, is a strong prodroma of Parkinson's disease and related disorder. So we started to do a lot of cohort of patients to follow them over time and looked whether they would develop Parkinson's disease or not. This is the main research direction presently. But in addition to that was to use these behaviors as a window onto the dream process. Because if you think about it, during this process of waking up and remembering your dream, you lose a lot of information. In contrast, if you look at people during REM sleep behavior disorder, you see the dream in action at the time it's happening. People speak exactly like they would speak during wakefulness. They behave like they would do during wakefulness. It's a narrow window, but it's a very, very proficient window onto dreams.
Is there certain content of these dreams? And my understanding is that in some of the neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's that you just mentioned, there are certain themes, there's certain types of dreams that they have. Can you talk about them?
The most recurrent themes of these dreams are aggression. They are mostly aggressed by animals or by other humans, or it's their loved one who are aggressed and they fight back to protect their loved one or to protect themselves. We see that in 80% of the dreams, but 20% of them are quite normal.
Can this be used by clinicians for diagnosis?
If somebody is enacting dreams, shouting at night, having these dreams of being attacked, and enacting them in the bed in their 50s or 60s, yes, it can be really used in the diagnosis process. You must think about Parkinson's disease that is coming, but the enacting part is the most important because all people can have nightmares, but enacting them is a key point that is caused by the beginning of Parkinson's disease.
Another area you study has to do with lucid dreams. Can you tell us what lucid dreams are and how they might provide a better understanding of dream states, and how they can be used in sleep medicine?
Lucid dreams is being aware of dreaming while you are still dreaming, without awakenings. Sometimes you realize you're dreaming and it wakes you up, but lucid dreamer can remain asleep, and as soon as they realize that they are dreaming, many of them can act or change some part of their dreams. Most of them try, for example, to fly. And you can also change your dream to make them more agreeable, avoid enemies, or making nice travel over the world, have sex with great stars. So it's a condition that occurs in the normal population. It's more frequent in children than in adults. And this ability to change your dreams is very useful when you have nightmares. If you can realize that it's a bad dream or a nightmare and change it, it will make your nightmare disappear. It's something we have developed with patients with narcolepsy, which is another disorder where people are sleepy all the time. And they used it a lot to change their nightmare to make them more agreeable dream.
So you communicate with the self-aware patient and try to get them to take certain actions? Is that what you're saying?
Until our recent work on lucid dreaming, it was thought that you could not communicate with somebody asleep and dreaming, but we were able to do that in a series of patients. We were able to ask them some questions where they were asleep, and they were able to answer, not with their mouth, but with some signs on their body, like frowning or smiling. So, because lucid dreamers, in addition to changing their dreams, they can be able to also send signals or codes to the investigators. And in this case, they are just great subject for helping us about researching dreams. And lucid dreaming is also scientific tools to explore what happens during our dreams. For example, it was possible to know if time was the same during our dreams and during reality, using some signals sensed by the lucid dreamers, like counting from 0 to 10 during dreams and doing the same during wakefulness. It was shown that it was the same duration. And we used it more recently to ask our lucid dreamers to send us codes about the emotion they were feeling in their dreams. And what we found is that emotions are going extremely fast during lucid REM sleep, and they switch very rapidly from smiling to crying, as if it was one of the functional dreams to regulate emotion.
Does it also have any kind of clinical use in helping patients?
Yes, it has some clinical use, but you must be a lucid dreamer, which is something, if you're not spontaneously a lucid dreamer, it may be difficult to acquire. You need 3 to 6 months of training to get a proficient lucid dreamers. But there are some people trying to develop some other techniques to accelerate the ability to become aware that you are dreaming when you are dreaming.
What are you most excited about in your research going forward?
The most exciting thing, I think, is lucid dreaming. It's such a potent way to answer a lot of questions we had about dreams for a long time. And because I found that these patients with narcolepsy were proficient lucid dreamers doing naps during daytime, we have built a lot of experiment around these ideas, and it worked very well to answer all the questions we had about dreams. So it's coming one paper after the other because it takes time to publish. But I'm surprised by how efficacious this model is to understand dreaming.
This is really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Science Quickly is produced by Tulika Bose, Jeff Delvicio, Kelso Harper, and Karine Leung. Our show's music was composed by Dominic Smith. Please consider supporting independent journalism like this. Become a Scientific American subscriber today, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify. For Science Quickly, I'm Gary Sticks.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For older adults, optimal aging includes preventing injuries, effectively managing existing chronic conditions, and maintaining physical and cognitive health and social engagement. I'm Dr. Linda Anderson, Director of CDC's Healthy Aging Program. The promotion of cognitive health is a critical component of overall good health. Cognitive health among older adults is not just the absence of disease. It's the development and preservation of cognitive abilities such as memory, language, judgment, and remembered skills such as driving. Cognitive abilities enable individuals to maintain social connectedness, an ongoing sense of purpose, and the ability to function independently. In 2013, CDC and the Alzheimer's Association released the second in a series of roadmaps. This roadmap, the Public Health Roadmap for State and National Partnerships 2013 to 2018, was developed as part of CDC's Healthy Brain Initiative. It reflects the insights and expertise of a wide range of stakeholders at the national, state, and community levels. The roadmap shares the Healthy Brain Initiative's vision of cognitive health as a vital component of overall health and well-being, an area ripe for public health efforts. Specific actions are addressed in 4 traditional domains of public health. The first is monitor and evaluate. Tracking the health of the nation is a fundamental public health function. Actions in this area include assessments related to cognitive health that help quantify and qualify the public health impact and inform public health policies and strategies. The second domain is educate and empower the nation, which focuses on actions that raise public awareness and improve access to information and resources. The third domain, develop policy and mobilize partnerships, includes actions aimed at ensuring that cognitive health is integrated into a broad spectrum of public health work. The fourth area, Assure a Competent Workforce, focuses on preparing public health professionals to translate current and emerging findings on cognitive health into effective public health practice. This roadmap provides a solid foundation for the public health community to anticipate and respond as new scientific discoveries related to cognitive health emerge. Public health agencies and partners are encouraged to work together on actions that best fit their mission, needs, interests, and capabilities. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/aging/healthybrain.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
What's the story on Supreme Court justices and ethical standards? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The Senate Judiciary Committee has voted in favor of legislation that would impose new ethical rules on the members of the Supreme Court. The proposal has come about because of the recent revelations about justices having received lavish vacations and private jet trips and educational expenses for a relative paid for by politically involved billionaires, none of which did they disclose. All of which we know about only because of investigative reporting. To these revelations, various justices have responded that they broke no law or ethical rules because nothing requires them to reveal this information. And indeed, ethics laws that apply to other federal judges and members of Congress don't cover the Supreme Court, which is what the proposed legislation would change by requiring justices to abide by the same ethical and disclosure rules as members of Congress. Nothing more and nothing less. Which is a horrible idea, according to South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who has announced that the bill has no chance in the Senate, where 60 votes are necessary to overcome a filibuster. As for the House, pundits say the bill wouldn't survive a vote there either. So, the answer to the question, has the time come for the Supreme Court to be bound to unambiguous written ethical standards regarding disclosure and transparency? The answer to that question apparently is no. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1898. That was the day that the United States Armed Forces invaded Puerto Rico. The invasion was part of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the U.S. State Department noted, quote, "It seems to be conceded that every year we shall be confronted with an increasing surplus of manufactured goods for sale in foreign markets if American operatives and artisans are to be kept employed year-round." Many business leaders in the U.S. clamored for market expansion. At the time, Spain was still a colonial presence in the Caribbean and Pacific. When a revolution in Cuba sought to drive out the Spanish, in the United States, the drum beats for war began to boom. Many saw this as an opportunity to expand the U.S. sphere of influence, although some labor leaders warned against war. One official from the Longshoremen's Union warned working people, quote, "If there is a war, you will furnish the corpses and the taxes, and others will get the glory." But soon labor leaders, including the president of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, got swept up in the war fever. In just a few months, the U.S. ousted the Spanish and became the colonial power in not only Puerto Rico, but also Guam and the Philippines, as well as Hawaii. This gave the United States footholds in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The small island of Puerto Rico remains a U.S. territory to this present day. Since the U.S. invasion, there have been movements for both Puerto Rican independence and also for full U.S. statehood. Today, the Puerto Rican people face a severe economic crisis, towering debt, and an unemployment rate more than double that of the United States. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's lots more of us where we come from, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low 90s, so a bit cooler than what we've had. We'll see if that holds true. We may inch up to the mid-90s, but we'll see. Abundant sunshine throughout the day, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the upper 50s, low 60s. Winds continuing out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then sunny tomorrow with highs in the low 90s once again. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated moderate in our little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 31 parts per million, though we continue in an air quality alert, so air quality could be intermittent. If it's good, open up your windows, air it out. They even say if it's moderate, but I'm telling you, if it gets moderate, that's when I'm making sure we're filtering. But that's just me. The UV index is in the very high range at level 9, so take care if those numbers are similar in your area. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.21 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 77%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 68 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 68 and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm warning, and boy, do they get them in Paris. Rome is 90 degrees and fair with a heat advisory. Kyiv is 85 and fair. Kabul is 74 and fair. Hong Kong is 86 and fair. Tokyo is 81 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 44 and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 84 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Michael Varaklis and Derek Gatopoulos of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A Greek Air Force water-dropping plane crashed while diving into a wildfire in southern Greece today, killing both pilots as authorities battle blazes that have been raging for days across the country amid a return of heat wave temperatures. A state ERT TV video showed the CL-215 aircraft releasing its load of water on the island of Evia before its wingtip apparently snagged a tree branch. Moments later, it disappeared into a deep fold in the ground from which a fireball erupted. The Air Force said the pilots, aged 34 and 27, both died in the crash. The plane had no ejection system. The Prime Minister, Mitsotakis, canceled a planned visit to Cyprus for Wednesday tomorrow, and 3 days of mourning were called for Greece's armed forces. A third successive heat wave in Greece pushed temperatures back above 104 degrees Fahrenheit across parts of the country yesterday, Tuesday, amid a string of evacuations from fires that have raged out of control for days, ripped on by strong winds. It is still unclear how they started, although tinder dry conditions amid the summer heat means the slightest spark can trigger a blaze that will spread fast if not quickly quenched. Several people have been arrested or fined across Greece in recent days for accidentally starting fires.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Daniel Politi and Carlos Valdez of the Washington Post brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Argentine government and members of Bolivia's opposition demanded answers yesterday, Monday, following the sealing of an opaque defense agreement between Iran and Bolivia that raised concerns in South America's southern cone. It could be a way for Tehran to boost its influence in the region. The deal reached last week has particularly raised concerns in Argentina, where prosecutors have long alleged that Iranian officials were behind the 1994 bombing of the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires that killed 85 people. Iran has denied any involvement in the attack. Argentina's foreign ministry sent a note to the Bolivian embassy in Buenos Aires on Monday, yesterday, requesting information about the scope of the discussions and possible agreements reached during the official visit of Bolivian Defense Minister Edmundo Novillo to the Islamic Republic of Iran. An official at Argentina's foreign ministry said, and he was not authorized, or they were not authorized to speak on the record. The note from Argentina's diplomatic headquarters came on the same day as members of Bolivia's opposition submitted a written request to the government demanding information about the scope of the agreement that was sealed on July 20th. The defense minister must explain the agreement and why it has been signed with a country that has complications on the international stage when Bolivia is supposed to be pacifist, according to its constitution. Gustavo Alega, a Bolivian opposition lawmaker who is the Secretary of Defense and Armed Forces Committee in the Chamber of Deputies, told the AP. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the ISW, based in Washington, Iran could be seeking to sell drones to Bolivia, noting that Ostiani has said Tehran could help Bolivia with controlling its borders and combating drug smuggling. The agreement comes at a time when Iran has supported Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the government of President Luis Arce of Bolivia has refused to condemn Moscow at the UN General Assembly. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.